SORT. It's stands for Save Our Rural Town. It's an organization that was formed almost 10 years ago. And we've worked with a number of communities. Oh, you can't hear back there? Now you can. Okay. Can you hear now? All right. So SORT has worked with a number of communities around the Antelope Valley and actually also in Riverside County and some counties up north, assisting communities with regulations and projects and helping them create comments or generate comments for regulators and decision makers to help inform the decision makers about rural life, how a number of projects are not consistent with rural life, and to give them information on how to best present their arguments and properly present impacts and how to explain how projects and ordinances can really adversely impact rural areas. So we've been very active in the Antelope Valley, as well as I'm from Acton, so a lot of our actions and activities have involved Acton, but we work with a number of areas as well. So this presentation today is on the implications of proposed revisions to LA County's significant ecological areas ordinance. And again, I'm Jack Lanier. I'm the director of Save Our Rural Town. Okay. Now, most development in the Antelope Valley has been exempt from SEA requirements up to now, such as single-family residences with accessory animal uses, agricultural uses on land that was previously farmed within the prior 4 years. However, the county proposes significant changes to both the SEA ordinance itself, as well as the land area that will be subject to SEA requirements. And just so you know what I mean, SEA stands for Significant Ecological Area. Now, these changes are consistent with the sustainability plan that was adopted in 2019, which states that 70% of the county needs to be set aside as natural rural areas, natural rural preserves. The problem is 65% of the county is, only 65% of the county is currently in a natural preserve state, which means that they need to rewild effectively another 5% of the county to achieve this 70% goal. And most of that rewilding is going to happen up in the Antelope Valley. And so the Antelope Valley is a big target for these SEA changes. Now, the focus of this presentation is on how the SEA ordinance will affect North County if certain assumptions and certain map expansions are adopted by the board. Now, I want to point out here that the SEA ordinance is a very lengthy regulation, and it touches on many, many issues. I'm touching on the issues that I think are most important and will affect property owners the most here, but we're not, a large part of the ordinance also addresses what are called SEA protected trees, protected water resources. We're not touching on those things, and I urge you to review the ordinance itself to look for those types of things, because we would be here for 4 hours if I had to talk about those things, but I'm focused on the highlights. So that's what we're going to be doing today, as well as expansions to existing development. Currently, the ordinance regulates expansions that have what they call a building site area, and that has a very specific definition. But if the building site area exceeds 20,000 square feet. However, one of the changes regional planning proposes to make is to reduce that threshold to 15,000 square feet, which is a big change. The county has also adopted a special definition for development. Development includes not only where you construct your house and where you grade your pad and those things, but they also include the entire fuel modification area around your structures, all right? And they also include in development, and this is really important, any activity that alters vegetation, including, and they specifically state this, including what they call active recreational activities. They do not define what that means, but any activity that would be deemed recreational, such as riding a bike, riding a horse, walking, hiking, that would alter vegetation, would be considered development, and it's prohibited on your property in an SEA without a permit. So you need to be aware of it. So anyway, so we can go on to the next slide. And I'll give more, we'll get more into that in some of the examples that we're going to talk about. So the SEA ordinance achieves the county's natural open space preservation goals because it restricts substantial land disturbance within SEAs to just approved building site areas and driveways. You cannot disturb anything outside of your building site area or your driveway, including, as I said, hiking, so on. The only use it authorizes outside of building site areas and driveways is fuel modification. And we're all familiar with that. Well, most of us who are in high and very high fire hazard areas. It also requires property owners to set aside and preserve large areas as natural open space in exchange for the privilege of building or growing crops on your land. These areas must lie outside of the fuel modification zones to ensure that they are not disturbed in any way, even through fuel modification processes. Okay, the next slide. Now, developing in an SEA area is a multi-step process. First step is you hire biologists, and that biologist will survey the property. It will, they will prepare what's called a biological constraints map, which breaks down the entire parcel and reports the biological resources on each part of the parcel. And it assigns basically a value to each biological resource in each area. So you get a map with many colors saying this has got this kind of habitat, this has got this kind of habitat, this certain species was found here. And it's a map that maps out your whole property. And that map, in connection with your development program, drives what your SEA requirements are going to be. So then after you've stepped through the biologist requirements, you go to what's called an SEA counseling session. And in the SEA counseling session, they will tell you how to proceed with the development. They will tell you whether or not you're eligible for a ministerial review or a discretionary review. Does everybody know what those are? A ministerial review means that it's just I have a slide on it later, but the ministerial review is a much less onerous review and approval process. A discretionary review requires something called a conditional use permit, and the permit fees on that for an SEA CUP, I think, are over $24,000. That's just to apply. At the counseling session, they will also discuss whether they'll discuss with you the biological resource values of your property. So you'll have an idea of what, the high values and the low values. You are then giving an indication on the amount of natural open space you will be required to dedicate or set aside. Okay, slide 6. Now, if you're not familiar with the differences between ministerial and discretionary, a ministerial approval is typically something also known as a by right approval. It just requires a site plan typically for this SEA process. However, if you have to go through the discretionary process, it requires a conditional use permit, and you have to go through the hearing process, and it could be appealed to the Board of Supervisors. You are subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. So either a negative declaration or an environmental impact report will be required. It's very substantial. So obviously the objective is to not be subject to a discretionary CUP review. Now, one other thing, even if you're going through the ministerial process, having a preservation requirement as a certain amount of land set aside is likely. It's not necessarily mandatory, but it's highly likely. In the CUP process, it is mandatory according to the guidelines. There are minimum set aside ratios for every category of land in an SEA CUP requirement. Okay, next slide. So how does the county decide whether the SEA approval process is ministerial or discretionary? It's driven by two things. First, it's driven by the value of the biological resources on your property. And this is a function of the richness the character and the quality and the variety of the habitat on your land. It's also driven by connectivity between small scale and large scale habitat areas. They call them patches, habitat patches. The second thing it depends on is how your development is configured in terms of biological resources, in terms of the biological resources it affects. Okay. So how does the county assign values to the biological resources on your property? The county has devised a system that classifies land into 5 basic categories. The categories range from 1 to 5. Category 1 being the land having the highest biological resource value and the highest protection level. Category 5 is land that has been previously disturbed and or has relatively little biological value in the biologist's opinion. Now, for each of these categories, the county has assigned mandatory natural open space set-aside requirements for achieving their preservation goals. And you can switch to slide 9. Okay, so now, what do you have to do to qualify for a ministerial SEA review? You must meet, you must meet specific land category disturbance thresholds. So for example, you may not disturb any even a square inch of land that's designated as category 1. If you do, you are not eligible for a ministerial review. You can only disturb 500 square feet of land that's designated as category 2. If you disturb more than that, then you have to get a CUP. Also, your building site area must not exceed 20,000 square feet. That's currently. Regional planning has proposed to reduce that to 15,000 square feet. So it's a significant reduction. Now, also the building area must, the driveway also must not exceed 300 feet long, and it can only be the minimum required by the fire department in width, which is 20 feet, and nothing else around it. You just a 20-foot driveway, no longer than 300 feet. Okay, I think I'm on the next. Oh no, I guess I have one more. Also, this is important. All natural open space delineations must be on site. So if you're eligible in every way for a ministerial review, but you don't have enough land on site to meet your preservation requirements, set aside requirements, and you need to acquire land off-site, then you are not eligible for a ministerial review. So ministerial review, you have to have on-site preservation. There are a lot of other requirements pertaining to fencing and other issues that I can't get into now, but I've hit the big ones here. So now the principal driver for how much natural open space you must dedicate are the size of your development footprint, which is defined as your building site area plus your road plus your entire fuel modification area. All right. Now, as many of you know, people in high and very high fire hazard areas, the fuel modification distance is 200 feet from the structure. And that means all structures. The only structures that I've seen, and there's a list the fire department has, the only structures that are exempt from that are structures that are made of non-combustible materials and are open on all sides. There's a list that, and if you'd like, I can send you the link, but of what the fire department doesn't require. But everything else has to be clear. The fuel mod area extends 200 feet from any structure that's not exempt. So it's a really large area. In a little while, I'll provide some examples of how this is implemented and how the fuel modification area can substantially increase the amount of your land that you're not permitted to touch other than for fuel modification purposes. Okay, now, if you are eligible for a ministerial site review, this table is taken from the Significant Ecological Ordinance Implementation Guideline. It's table 2. And I'm sorry if it's a little hard to see, but it's right out of the guidelines. As you can see, if SEA resource category 1, you're not allowed to disturb any of it. If you do, you have to get a CUP. Category 2, in less than 500 square feet, you're able to, you have to offset, you have to offset at a ratio of 2 to 1. If you're, and if you're more than that, you have to get a CUP. That's my understanding. Category 3, it's 1 to 1 if you're less than 500 square feet affected. It's 2 to 1 if you, and these are ratios of set aside. So every foot of X, you have to acquire and set aside 2 feet of a similar X outside your fuel mod area. All the way down to category 4, which requires a 1 to 1 if you're more than 5,000 square feet. And if you're in category 5, then you have no set aside ratios. The category 5 is, I have not looked at the what the SEA study says for all the areas in the Antelope Valley, but I know what it says about Acton, and that is that most of Acton is undisturbed, and so most of Acton would not qualify as a category 5, not qualify as for a ministerial review on category 5 land, because most of Acton is not category 5, and that's probably true in a lot of other areas as well. So let's go to the next slide. Now this slide was also taken out of the significant ecological ordinance implementation guidelines. Now this is what they have if you have to go through the SEA CUP. So if you're touching category 1 land, your offset ratio, your preservation ratio is 5 to 1. So every 5 square foot of category 1 you affect, you have to set aside 5. Going on down, category 2 is 4 to 1, category 3 is 3 to 1, category 4 is 2 to 1, and category 5 is 1 to 1. So that's why I said earlier that if you have to go through an SEA CUP, there will be mandated set aside requirements or preservation requirements. Okay. So the last slide discusses how we can move on. Oh, should have been one more slide. Oops. Yeah, right here. Sorry. The last slide, sorry. So the last slide discusses how the county secures the preservation offset, the preservation area that you need to set aside. If your project undergoes ministerial review, you'll have to sign a deed restriction or a covenant that is recorded with the county pertaining to the preservation area. However, if you have to go through an SEA CUP, the county has 5 options. They have ranked them in order of preference, and you must do the first one, and you can only avoid doing the first one if you can show that it's completely infeasible and it's beneficial to do one of the other ones. So the first option that you have to take, unless you could show it can't work, is that you have to dedicate your land to either the government or a land conservancy or a trust, excuse me. Then after that, the conservation easements, and then after that, permanent deed restrictions and covenants and so on and so forth. But these aren't options that you get to pick from. It's not a pick list. You have to do. Can't deed it to them. That would be a violation of the Subdivision Act. But what you do is
it's theirs. You connected to the earphones.
Here, let's see. Is anybody talking?
I think she's still giving her presentation, but I can't hear her.
Okay, at least somebody can hear me.
Yeah,
Jackie, we lost you.
It's
quite a while ago.
sorry, I'm turning us out. Okay, is the sound coming back on now? Sorry.
So it's and by the way, that's the table that I took, table 5, that showed those for CUP. Those are just recommended. If you guys, they could go much higher. They probably won't go lower, but I think they can see who can be.
If you need 200 feet clear each side of your house, that's 400 feet, but 400 feet, that's great.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's somebody can actually look at that.
Just end this real quick.
Somebody, and you can't do anything to it in disturbs vegetation if that's technically development and requires an SEA review. So, but if somebody's at, it's like, show that.
Yep.
Any other questions?
For absolute bid,
Okay, the sound I think went away again, didn't it?
Hi everyone, we're trying to get the sound back on. So they just asked a few questions. So I'm trying to get Jackie back on.
Okay, there's no sound still. Our question is, how is this not communism taking our property and our rights?
Only I doubt she can hear us if we can't hear her.
Now, I've been to some of the other meetings, or I went to one of the other ones, and basically they're going to try to take most of our land. They'll allow us 15,000 square feet, which is about a quarter acre, and they want us to sign the rest of our property over to them. Some of the other people told me from some of the meetings, if you have existing animals, you'd be able to have them, but you won't be able to get animals after that. Nor will you be able to fence unless you pull out a $25,000 permit to use our own property.
Just sounds like they're on a fundraising expedition for their own pockets and have no consideration for the property owners whatsoever.
Well, no, they don't, and that's wrong because this is our property that we had to purchase, and I heard before they're not going to purchase it from us. They can take land out in the middle of the desert and buy that up if they want it. But think about it. They were going to bring the train through town, so just think if they can steal our property, they can build up the area and not have to pay for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
And we need to let all our neighbors know about this because a lot of people might have got a letter but have no idea what's really going on.
Right.
And
So I'm gonna silence
Jose.
all. If everyone can mute, I'm gonna have to put I'll be close to Jackie so we can hear her.
You got it.
All right. So it's coming. Sorry.
It's taken out, but it's in the back in to some extent in another part of the ordinance. So it's very, you have to be very careful. If the disturbed farming activities were more than 40 years ago, that exemption is gone. So if the land is laid fallow for more than 4 years,
Are you guys able to hear her a little bit?
not very well.
Yeah, I just went back on. So let me.
Is this being recorded?
What happened? Can't hear anything, Jose.
I can hear little whispers from Jackie, but I can't hear
Yeah, can't hear the
anything.
presentation.
Right. Dang it, we just got all those new mics too. Figures.
Yeah.
The thing is, we need to learn how we can organize from here on to fight this thing. Whether we need to put all these
Let me see if we can get him back on. 1 second. Yeah. No. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can get.
There
Yes,
was
I'll hear you
something
here.
that on one of the C's things before, we were writing letters and they gave us, and the people that are, I guess, our representatives that we need to write to oppose it.
Well, SORT also has lawyers. If we
Can you-
decide
check?
everybody
Can you hear
can
me?
band together and we can sue them,
Or check.
they've done it before and they've won before.
Let me try it again.
Yes, Jackie, we can hear you.
Oh yeah, you can hear. Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
Oh, we're good? Okay, all right, so let's go on to the slide, the first example slide. I have a lot of notes, so I make sure I get exactly the right footage on each example, so. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry.
we can't see what you're sharing anymore, though, but we can hear you.
I can't hear him. I can hear you, but I can't hear them.
I can do this on Zoom again if people want. Like, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I see something that says Agenda 21. It's true. If you look at 20 years ago, you read Agenda 21 things and how crazy we thought it was, but that's the stuff that's happening right now.
Okay. I'm sorry? Okay, can you put up the example slides and I'll roll it? So the first example is a 2.5 acre parcel. It's already developed. And so what the implications would be for an expansion or new uses. Okay, no worries.
I can't hear anything or see anything.
Oh, I'm not talking. Can you hear now?
Oh, now I'm seeing a slide.
This is like at the movies, you used to have like halftime entertainment with the cartoons and stuff. Yeah, the dance, right? You'd scream. Okay, so here's our first example. It's 2.5 acres. Now in the in the lower right area that's marked in brown, that's the existing building site area. And this particular property owner, the existing development footprint, the existing building site area is 13,750 square feet, right? It's got a house, yard, and garage. There's also a 2,000 square foot driveway, so it meets the requirements. And that is not counted as part of the building site area. Now, the existing development footprint is approximately 94,000 square feet, and it includes the graded path, the driveway, and the fuel modification area. If you see where that yellow curve is up at the top, that is the existing fuel modification area for this property, right? Now, the remaining land is relatively untouched, but is not high in biological resource value, so it's got a Category 4 designation, right? The revised building site area now, because they want to add a turnaround with shades, they want to have a barn, and corrals area, so they have a barn and then corrals on either side. That development will increase the building site area to 18,750 square feet, which theoretically should still be below the CUP limit and would be eligible for ministerial review currently. However, because regional planning is going to be modifying or proposing to modify that threshold to drop it to 15,000 square feet, the ministerial permit doesn't seem like it would be applicable here. So this development might require a CUP. So the revised building site area is 18,750 feet, but it is not eligible for an SEA exemption, even though it's below 20,000, and that is because the barn and corral area is 750 square feet. And in the SEA, you're not eligible for a ministerial exemption, ministerial review if you add a livestock or equestrian or animal living quarters that's greater than 120 square feet. So because that barn is not 120 square feet, it's not eligible. It doesn't check all the boxes for ministerial, so a CUP would be required. So let's see. So with this addition, the total utilized space on the property, that means the total area that's rated and they can use, is 21,950 square feet, or about half an acre. All right. So now because the property is not eligible for ministerial review, it has to go through the CUP review, and it's category 4. Now it has to have I think it's a 2-to-1 offset ratio or preservation ratio instead of the 1-to-1 that it would have been eligible for if it could have gotten ministerial review, right? So, and also the fuel modification area footprint will go up, right? Because the barn is a structure that's not exempt from fuel mod requirements. So the red line on top shows where the new fuel mod zone is. Fortunately, it looks like to me, but I would never presume, so I don't know what the county would say, but it looks like to me that there is enough land on site of this property to be able to satisfy the offset requirements for the CUP. And so you wouldn't have to acquire extra land, but you would have to dedicate to the government or a land trust the portion outside of the fuel modification zone. So of the 2.5 acres considered in this scenario, the use of 0.5 acres is permitted. The remaining 2 acres, or about 80%, must be preserved and not disturbed except for vegetation control until a new CUP is processed. So this is why I was making the statement that this SEA ordinance will result in people not being able to use at least half of their land, if not more than half. Now remember also active recreation activities that alter vegetation is considered development and requires an SEA permit. Okay, so if you're gonna ride your horse or ride your bike or hike in the fuel mod area, you have to do so in a way that doesn't touch any vegetation. That's how I read the rules. I've never had the county tell me that, but that's the plain black and white language in their ordinance. So, and that's troubling. Yes. Yes, so the 200 feet goes off the property. They don't make you, well, I should say this. I don't believe they make you offset property on somebody else's property because you don't know, there could be a barn right on the property line. So, so this is just for me reading their ordinance requirements on your property and not trying to, but so you're right that the fuel mod envelope goes to the property on the left, the property on the right, and the property down below, but it's not your property. So I can't answer what the county would do, but I've never seen them do that, but there have not been that many SEA CUPs that have been processed to look at and see how the county actually implements these things. But I have not read anything in the ordinance that says you must go offset the fuel mod on your neighbor's property. So anyway, so let's move on to the example 2. Okay, this is the same existing development footprint as before, but here the lot has some topography, right? And, some of us live in areas where there's hills. Some of us live on nice flat land. So, so the barn and the corral in this scenario must go on a new graded pad to the north. All right. So this new barn expands the fuel modification area to the property boundary and beyond, right? And so only a small area up in the upper left is outside the fuel mod zone. So under this scenario, I don't see that the property owner would have enough on-site land to meet the 2-to-1 mitigation requirements that the SEA ordinance requires. So they would have to acquire, they would probably have to acquire off-site land and dedicate it to a land trust for the government. So That's unfortunate. Okay. So an important part of this slide is that it really shows you how important it is it really shows how important your development design can affect your implications under the SEA ordinance. So if you can pack your expansion closer to your already existing developed footprint, your fuel mod area won't hopefully expand too much, and you'll be able to offset what you need to within your own property line. Does that make sense? I mean, maybe it doesn't make any sense because you don't like any of this, but I just, if the explanation or the example makes sense. So let's go to the next one. So this is a new development on vacant 2.5 acre parcel. So this is new development. The land is previously disturbed and has little biological resource value, so it's category 5. The building site area, which is shown in brown, is 19,500 square feet, and the driveway is 1,000 square feet. Therefore, the total utilized space is 20,500 square feet, and it's also under the ministerial threshold, right? Let's see. So under current SEA ordinance thresholds, this project would be eligible for ministerial review, but because it's under the 20,000 square feet. But if the county adopts the proposed threshold of 15,000 square feet, this project would not be eligible for ministerial review and it'd have to go through the CUP process. Additionally, there would be a natural open space dedication requirement because of that. According to the guidelines, the offset requirement would be 1-to-1, even though it's category 5, because you're doing the CUP, you now no longer, you now have to offset category 5 disturbance. To satisfy this requirement, the property owner would have to set aside 2.5 acres of land as natural open space. Most of it would have to be acquired off-site and dedicated to a land trust because there's not enough there in the upper right corner to satisfy the preservation requirements. So of the 2.5 acres considered in this scenario, the use of 0.47 acres is permitted. The remaining 2.03 acres or 81% must be preserved and not disturbed except for vegetation control. So we can go to the next slide.
Setback to the right and the bottom, whatever current fire, whatever current setback.
Well, setback is something that the zoning code imposes as how far you have to have your structures from the property line. So in Acton, it's 50 feet.
That's not going to be.
No, and I can't predict what the county is going to do with this ordinance, but I have not ever seen them require you to offset. Well, this doesn't mean they wouldn't, but offset the fuel mod area on your neighbor's property too. I can't speak to that. I can only speak to what they actually will do on your property. So that's a really good question, and we're trying to arrange a meeting and a discussion with regional planning to talk about some of these issues. I'll make sure that that is a question that we answer. Like, how do we address fuel mod requirements on neighboring properties? Do they have to be offset as well in the preservation set aside? Let's see. This is example 4. Where I don't know where I am now. Okay, all right. All right. So this is the same development as in example 3, but the land is undisturbed and designated as category 4, right? Under the current SEA ordinance, it should be eligible for ministerial review because it's below the 20,000 square feet. However, because the land is category 4, the set aside preservation ratio is now 2-to-1, not 1-to-1. So now 2.2 acres have to be set aside, and there's not 2.2 acres available on this 2.5 acre parcel. So again, you'll have to acquire land offsite and set aside and dedicate it to a land trust or a government. So as with the other one, 80% of this property is to be untouched. Now, this is really important. If the county biologist decides that that land has habitat that can support as the San Diego coast toward lizard or the southern whiptail, both of which are called species of concern, then the land is automatically categorized as category 2. And that has a 4-to-1 preservation ratio, right? So obviously you'd have to acquire much more land, and I have the numbers here, but and the biologists actually do this at the SCA CUP that I reviewed that was done in 2025. The land was the biologist report said no evidence of whiptail, no evidence of coast horned lizard, which are horny toads. You've probably heard of them. It's been found on this property, but we believe the habitat is such that it could support the species, so we're designating it as category 2. So even if your land is category 4, the biologist thinks it's category 2, and that's all set forth in the guidelines. You can and I will. What I can do is I can send you a copy of the guidelines, the ARTC. You guys can post it on and send it out to all the town councils, so you'll see. It's also where the table 2 and the table 5 came from. So a lot of this understanding that I'm conveying to you is documented in that document. So, so not only can they determine that your land is category 2 because they think certain species could live there, they can do that, and they have done that. So I have every reason to think that they will do that going forward. So let's look at example 5.
The requirements of that land, I have neighbor land, so they have land on a mountain. So if I acquire that land, or the requirements about the land that you dedicate in
those, okay, so the question is that if you have to acquire offsite land, what are the requirements on the character of that land? It can, like my neighbor who has a giant hill that nobody's ever going to build on, can I just acquire that? So what you have to demonstrate, or what the SEA counseling session will clarify, is that the land that you acquire has to be similar in value to the land that's being affected by your development. So if I mean, a coast horned lizard can live on a hill just like they can live on the flat. So if they decide, okay, this is important for that purpose, then the answer would be yes. But and if that's the case, then they'll adjust the weight. They'll weight it accordingly. I can't predict what the county is going to do. I'm sorry, because I don't want to. I think it's important for the county to represent for themselves what they would do under certain circumstances. They've not done that yet. They've not done anything like that in any of their presentations. They've not given any examples, and they have not answered any of your questions along those lines. And that's very frustrating for me. So that's why I'm here. But I can only go so far, and I can't articulate what the county would do in particular circumstances, because sometimes the county does one thing one way, and then later on they do the exact same thing a different way. So, which is frustrating as well. So now we've got a different example. Another 2.5 acre parcel, category 4 land again. The building site area is 3,750 square feet. It's just a house and a driveway. It's tiny, right? The project should be eligible for ministerial review under both the current SEA and ordinance and the proposed changes to the ordinance. With the fuel modification area included, the development footprint is 78,915 square feet, or 1.8 acres, because it extends out to the fuel modification area. This leaves 0.7 acres available for natural open space preservation. So because the land is category 4, the open space preservation requirement is 1-to-1. So you've got to find 1.8 acres to offset the 1.8 acres you're disturbing. There's not enough. There's not 1.8 acres on the remaining part of the property. There's only, let's see, I don't remember what the math is. They will have to get some offset. They can offset some of their, or provide some of their preservation area on site, but they will have to acquire offsite lands as well in this scenario.
Okay, I think we all believe that I think we all believe that this new ordinance and expansion
the question is, how do we stop these people?
Exactly. How do we stop them, Jackie?
I want this, I'm going to limit this presentation to what they're doing so you know what you're up against. The sort of response, I'm going to, maybe the ARTC could talk about it afterwards, or we could discuss it organically, because it is troubling. But I haven't prepared any discussion on that for tonight, so.
Okay, but at the Acton Town Council meeting, Jackie, you had
Examples
stated,
are horrifying. I agree. I'm sorry, somebody's talking on the internet. What?
I was just going to say at the Acton Town Council, Jackie, you had brought up several points that were quite relevant in opposing different points opposing this, removing the AV exemption. And so I think you have some really good points to make on that.
Well, one of the key, okay, so is that Angela? Angie?
Yes, hi, Jackie.
Okay, hi, Angie. So at the Acton Town Council meeting, I pointed out that, because I analyzed and reviewed very carefully their survey report that they used to justify the boundary expansion that they proposed, which now occupies huge amounts of the Antelope Valley, right? You've all seen that expanded area. So I analyzed, because I was focusing on Acton, I analyzed the justification that they published for expanding the SEA boundary to go from about 30% of Acton to maybe more like 70 or more percent of Acton. And I observed that their study stated that and I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact wording because it was a month ago, but basically their study said that Acton didn't have a lot of valuable biological resources, but that it's really important for corridor linkages between the Sierra Pelonas and the San Gabriel Mountains, right? So, and therefore there was no need to, and then I also pointed out that their own study shows that the key linkages between the Sierra Pelonas and the San Gabriels were not even in Acton. They were actually in Agua Dulce and West. So I pointed out that there was no justification for the expansion of the boundary in the community of Acton. Now, every community here needs to look at that analysis that they did and analyze the justification that they provided for the expansion in your own area. And see if it holds water, see if it carries weight. What I found in Acton is that it did not, and that was a key element of the comments that were submitted by the Acton Town Council on that issue. So I urge everybody from other communities to look at that study and try to craft cogent similar arguments, review their studies. If it doesn't sound right, it probably isn't right. You know your communities better than anybody else, right? And so, and the survey that was done in Acton was all done from I think one survey spot was the Arco, right in the heart of our town. So, I'm not comfortable saying anything more about what you can do to convince the county to come to a different conclusion. That could be something for another meeting. That this meeting is to let you know about how it's going to impact you. Or actually, really what I want to do is I want to give you the tools you need to look at your land and see what the impact will be, right? If it's previously disturbed farmland, it probably will be considered category 5. If you know it doesn't have riparian habitat, that's always category 1, right? And then there's a whole spectrum of land classifications between them, and the guidelines, which I'll send to the ARTC, gives descriptions of each of those categories. So you will, does my land have these things? You can look it up. Is it a fish and wildlife classification class 2 for biota? That would be a category 2. Class 3 for biota, category 3. So you can probably do some of this work or some of this analysis on your own. I want to give you an idea of how this is going to affect you. Hope that makes sense.
To be honest, I don't believe the analysis is going to be necessary because based on their goal of having property owners place their land into a land trust and so forth, I would pretty much guarantee that no matter what they're going to say, that your property, the habitat could host this particular animal or could could be habitat for whatever species, even if that species hasn't been there in years, or, the possibility of it being there, it's a land grab and there's no compensation. And my biggest problem with all of this was that in their handouts, they said nothing about the designation, that you had to place part of your land in a land trust. Nothing of that sort was on their handouts, but yet they also said it's not going to decrease your property value because we aren't reassessing your property. But there's no compensation. There's no, no reduction in taxes, but yet they want you to give them your land.
Well, so they can't just adopt an ordinance and find that it's going to achieve certain objectives if they don't have evidence, and it has to be substantial evidence to support that. So those are all issues that we can get into and need to be gotten into. Every community needs to look at it on their own. What in Acton, when I pointed out these observation ratios, and I pointed out to Iris Chi, table 2, and what it says, the 1-to-1, the 5-to-1, the 4-to-1, and then table 7 or table 5 that says 5-to-1 for category 1, they disputed that and they said I was incorrect. And so I just want to explain to you why I made those statements, and you can see for yourself. Maybe we need to start a whole grassroots movement on this. It's still very much in the initial stages. And I know the public comment period ended June 30, but if you are concerned by any of these things you're hearing tonight, go ahead and send them comments, because it's still part of the record and they have to consider it because it's public comment. Their deadline is passed, but that doesn't mean you can't submit. You can submit comments anytime up until the second that the Board of Supervisors gavel drops. And that's true. So, and it has to be part of the record, and it can't be dismissed. And also, you are subject matter experts on your own land, right? So you know better than their biologists about your problem. So if there's things about your property or things about this that you've heard that is going to make you concerned about your property, and you've read their justification and their justification doesn't hold water, then that is substantial evidence, and you are an expert on your own land, and they have to consider that. If they dismiss it, they have to have a documented reason why. They can't just ignore it. So there's some tools you can use going forward to address this. But I do want to get to the rest of the examples. There's only a few more, I think. We've done this one, right? Or is this, which is example 6? Okay, sorry, example 6. This is new development on a vacant 5-acre parcel. Has some hillside areas to the north and the south. See where the black lines are. That sort of limits development. Some of us have land that looks like this. The building site area is 19,456 feet. The driveway is 6,000 feet. The total utilized space is 0.58 acres. The development footprint, however, because of the fuel mod area, which now extends across the whole property, is 3.4 acres. So the area available for on-site natural open space dedication is 1.6 acres. This project is not eligible for ministerial review, even though the building site area is less than 20,000 square feet, because there's not enough on-site land and outside the fuel modification area. So they have to get off-site land, so they're not eligible for ministerial. And because they're not eligible for ministerial, it's no longer 1-to-1 offset ratio for category 4. It is now 2-to-1 for category 4. So now you have to get more land off-site. So you'll need to get, for this scenario, 6.8 acres have to be preserved. You can use your 1.6 acres outside your fuel mod, but an additional 5.2 acres will have to be acquired off-site. And
They're talking about how they're
well, similar, okay, but the okay, can you go to the next slide? Sorry, this. So this is similar, identical place, but instead of equestrian uses, they want to establish agricultural uses. Now, the SEA ordinance allows you to grow crops as an accessory use in zone 2, which is the first 100 feet of your fuel modification area. You're not allowed to put it out in the 200, out from between 100 and 200, but the first 100 feet. So that's what they've done here. And so the only structure is a garage and a house. And it's a big garage because they have a tractor. Anyway, so the building site area here is 9,293 square feet when combined with the driveway, and the crop area, the total utilized space is about 1.2 acres. The development footprint though is 2.97 acres. So the area available for dedication is only 2.03 acres. The project is not eligible for ministerial review again because there's not enough land on site available to preserve on site to satisfy the preservation requirements. So again, a CUP would be required in a 2-to-1 offset. So more land would have to be acquired. So this is another example of that. And now we're going to go to a 10-acre property. And this is somebody's equestrian dream. We got a roping arena. We got stables and corrals. We got a hay barn. We got a turnout. We got a house, a garage, and a driveway. All right. So this building site area is 84,000 square feet. Obviously not eligible for a ministerial review. The area available for a natural open space dedication is 6.6 acres. It's category 4 land, so they have to offset it by 2-to-1. Means they need to get 6.8 acres. They only have 6.6 acres on site, so they're going to have to acquire land off site to satisfy the requirements. Yes. They have to acquire it off-site from another property owner. And it has to be similar character. I don't know. There's no guidance on how close it has to be or how far it has to be. If it could be 30 miles away. The county might have internal policies on that. I've not seen them. So in the CUP, at SEA CUP I looked at from 2025, they acquired a large chunk of land, maybe about a mile away in the middle of a vacant area, undisturbed area. So, and they got probably overall is about a 3-to-1 offset ratio that they acquired. So you have to find the land somewhere. And I'm sure they probably talk about it as part of the SEA counseling. I've never been through an SEA counseling process, so I don't know all the back and forth, but somehow that land has to be acquired and it has to be of similar character or value.
Jackie, I have a question. This is Angie. So, for example, on my property, my well is at the complete corner of my property. So if I have to designate, let's say, however many acres I have to put into a land trust, does that mean that land trust now it controls my water and is in control of the water rights?
Well, there's no guidance on when you dedicate it to them. Does that mean you also have to give them access? You have to let them go across your land. There's no, I found no guidance on that. So I don't have that kind of information. And also I want to point out all of these examples are just very basic. We all know we have to have our well, like I think 50 feet from an equestrian corral and 50 feet from our house. We have to have our septic, X number of feet from our homes. I don't remember. Those details are not on here. A lot of these examples, I'm just trying to give broad brushstrokes, but they would all be part of your building site area. Okay. Fortunately, since none of those are structures, I don't think a well would be considered a structure. I don't know if the fire department would require you to have a field mod around it. I would have a hard time believing they would, but if you have a combustible shed around it, maybe they would. I don't know. I can't answer that question, but certainly it's disturbed land as part of your footprint, whether or not it requires a fuel modification. So when you look at your own property, you have to factor in those things as well. And these examples do comply with the county requirement of the house being at least 35 feet away from a place where a horse or livestock live. That is a requirement. And they generally require with local setback requirements, like in Acton's 50 foot, other places it's probably different. But you're right, Angela, those are issues that need to be looked at with your own property. And I do not know, and I can't presume to know what the county would say about I'm sure they'd carve out your land because it's disturbed area, so it wouldn't be part of any natural preserve, because the natural open space areas you set aside have to be untouched and outside of your fuel mod area. So it would be, I would imagine it would be part of your building site area. But these are questions, again, that we would love to be able to ask the county. Maybe someday we'll be able to have, we need to have a discussion with them, a granular example level discussion on to get hash these issues out. Yes.
How can we facilitate that?
You have to acquire additional land, so they have to be in the sea area.
I don't see anything in the guidance about that either. If it's valuable land, I would imagine it is in an SEA, but maybe it wouldn't be. Sometimes they assess value based on connectivity to habitat patches. So if your land is being taken, set aside, preserved for habitat purposes, then you probably will have to get land that preserves habitat connectivity. I'm sorry, if your land is being preserved for connectivity purposes, you probably need to provide connectivity land between habitat patches. And they're expanding substantially the character of the land that they're considering to be connectivity. They're no longer looking at connectivity between large spaces like the Sierra Polonas and the San Gabriels. They're now looking at small patches, connectivity, maybe half a mile away. And that was one of the things that was discussed at the meeting. So you're asking really good questions, and they are questions that really only the county can answer. So I can just give you what the guidance says and how it applies to certain scenarios. But that's a really good question. So that would be another question that we ask them about offsite fuels modifications. Do we have to have preserved land to address that, even though it's not on your property? And also, how can it be in an SCA, or how far away can it be? I do know that the character has to be similar to what makes the disturbed property valuable. Let's see, we just have a couple more examples. So example 9, I know we have some ag people here, so doing a couple of agricultural examples. So in this one, it's a 10-acre parcel, all right, that is to be used solely for agricultural purposes, but it's undisturbed vacant land and has some biological resource value, so it's category 4. An SCA CUP would be required because the agricultural development is not on category 5 land. According to the guidelines, the minimum natural open space preservation ratio would be 2:1. So the largest area that could be cultivated is 3.3 acres, because the remaining 6.7 acres would be used to dedicate to government or land trust to satisfy the natural open space. This is how I'm reading their guidelines. And I am sure, because I'm sure there are county people online and in this room, that they will let me know if they disagree with anything I say, and I will let you know too. So and then the next one is example 10. The same situation is shown as before, category 4 land. However, the county biologist believes that the land could support a coast horned lizard and other species of concern. So now that upgrades the land to category 2. The minimum natural open space preservation requirement is 4:1. And so you would, you could use 2 acres of your 10-acre crop, because 8 acres, 4 times 2 is 8. So 8 acres have to be set aside. And we'll do the last one. So this is a 10-acre property as well. This time is for residential and dog rescue purposes on vacant undisturbed land that has some biological value, category 4. The building site area is 25,200 square feet, so not eligible for ministerial review. With the driveway, the total area that is utilized is about 0.65 acres. The development footprint, however, is 96,000 square feet, or 2.2 acres. According to the guidelines, the minimum natural space, open space preservation requirement would be 2:1, so they'd have to preserve 4.4 acres, which they could do in the upper right. You see that 4.4 acres, so that would be, they could preserve all of it on site, but that would leave probably 94% of their land untouched. The only usable part is about 6% of their land in this area right here, their building site area and their driveway, because they're not, again, not allowed to touch the area where the fuel mod is in a way that disturbs vegetation, because that's development and would require a SCA review.
surplus land with the law, people might have to buy, offset, farmers. My guess is there's a lot of smart people that already own the land just for this purpose. Can we just get the county money and then they go buy the land? I mean, I think that already goes on.
It does, I'm sorry. So the question was, can you contribute basically to a land bank or something like that, and they buy the land, you just pay the money for it. So if you saw under the ordinance, if you're ministerial, you have to do a covenant or a deed restriction, okay? Because all the offsets on your land, right? So you can't do that, what you're suggesting, like pay into a mitigation bank or something. But for SEA CUP, remember there were, I think, 5 choices. The first choice being the land, dedicate to a land trust. So you have to show that it's infeasible for you to find any land or acquire any land that you could give to a bank, either not give, but dedicate to the government or dedicate to a land trust. And then you go drop down to the next one, which I can't remember what the order was. So you can't, one of the last choices was donating, I think, to a mitigation bank. So that is an option, but you have to show that none of the other higher options are feasible for you.
The cost of all this is exorbitant. I don't think many homeowners can afford any of this.
That might be in the examples in the SCA CUPs I've seen. The developer actually went out and bought the land and dedicated, or they might have, because you can't buy a part of land, right? That's illegal under the Subdivision Map Act. So they probably acquired the whole thing and then dedicated a portion of it and maybe kept the rest of it. Every situation is going to be different, and that's why it's really important for you to take some of these tools that I'm giving to you and looking, try to predict what implication might have for you. So, what did Angela say?
I said the cost of all of this is exorbitant, and most homeowners aren't going to be able to afford any of this.
There's nothing in that statement that I can disagree with. Oh, she said that the price of all of this is just exorbitant, and nobody will be able to afford any of this. And there's nothing to disagree in that statement, within that statement. I'm sorry, what was that?
Portion of land that they want us to dedicate to them, or a donation or whatever, they still want us to get property tax.
Well, technically you would own all of it, and I didn't see any provisions in the guidelines that allow you to devalue your property that is how I interpret it. Again, that's not a question. The county hasn't answered a lot of these questions that are really the most important questions, right? Yeah. And when they talk to us about these SEAs, it's all very 35,000 feet high level, but it has real implications for us.
Why are they?
That's fair too. That's a question. So the comment was why the county needs to explain to us why they're doing it, and the prediction was they're doing it to either A, stop development, or B, make a ton of money. Yeah, and he just said he's cynical. I don't disagree, and that's a fair question. The county should answer that question.
All right, real quick. So this is the portion where we're gonna do, if we have questions or what is concerning to you, and the way we'll do it is we'll do it in person and then hand it off to somebody on Zoom, so it's back to back. So we'll start with any of you who have a comment or question regarding the SCA. So we have.
They answered the question I just asked. Why are you guys doing it?
Oh, I'm not part of the county, so no, yeah.
My question is, what are we going to do to stop this?
Was for us to look at all the information that's in writing and how it would potentially apply. So this is just for us to keep the discussion. Then we'll go back to the county and say, here, we still have this concerns and questions. So go ahead.
Good evening. Are you reading me here?
Test 1, test 2.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, you're good.
They can do it, so speak to about Larry. Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Fred Lundigan. I'm a water well drilling contractor. I've already dealt with this. She's giving some broad strokes here. I'm going to give some numbers, serious dollar numbers, folks. Okay, 2.5 acres, Port to Home, 106, right up the road. Nice piece of property, dead flat. They came in and they said, "Hey, look, we want a CUP, $16,000 regional planning, their fee." Okay, then they want $3,000 for their COC. Then you're going to have to. They want plans drawn, $10,000 by an engineer. Then they want a biota report, which their people you pay to fix, which is going to be about $3,000. Okay, so that's $3,000 already. But the problem at hand is they will not allow a permit to drill a water well until you jump through all these hoops. Which you can actually pay all these fees, you can actually buy some product for them, and then you get the opportunity to drill a water well. I've seen this map. It comes giant chunk animal valley out here, runs right up into the hill. But they don't tell you is that after you pay all these fees, and they're saying it's 2 years. 2 years, folks, you're paying all this for 2 years, and then you get the opportunity to drill the well, and it's a test hole. And if there's not enough water to jump through the LA County's hoops, you don't get a building permit. It means you bought some property with them. You see, I've come up with $34,000 at this point. And then you get the opportunity to drill a water well. And if the well does not pass LA County's 24-hour yield test, you can't get a building permit. So you're now out the property you bought, the one adjacent property, $34,000 in LA County, and you got nothing, folks. And that's what it's all about. And that assumes the biologist approves it, and he doesn't think that the grass is going to.
Okay, so we have a question on. Do you want to comment on that, or do you want a next question on Zoom?
Well, the fees are exorbitant, and it is a crapshoot because the well doesn't pan out. But there's so much wrong in all of this that I just have to agree with everything you just said. I mean, and I think everybody here agrees.
So the question is, what can we do to oppose this and stop it? I think that we need to request that the county send a letter out to every parcel, every owner of parcels that they're, in their proposed, C area, whether it's an existing C or proposed in their expansion, because they didn't send letters out to anybody that is currently in a C, in which, we had the AV exemption. But now that they want to remove that, they didn't send letters out to anybody that were in a current C.
Well, okay, so the only, in my opinion, again, has nothing to do with what I read in the guidelines or anything, but in my opinion, the only way that we will be able to craft a cogent response to try to curb some of this is by looking at their justification, and it isn't a study, and I'll send it to the ARTC. You've got to read their report that justifies why they've expanded the SEA boundary. And you've got to, it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. You got to read the report. You got to figure out everything that's wrong with it. Then you have to calmly, respectfully, didactically, and specifically articulate how and why every single thing they're saying is wrong. Okay? And I am able to do that for Acton because I've already done it for Acton. I didn't go into great details. It wasn't a long letter because at this point it's still preliminary. They're going to come back and who knows, maybe they'll put the exemption back in for residential uses. That would be great, wouldn't it? We need to do something about the 120 square foot areas which you're allowed to put your horses in. That's what they're going to for one horse. That's a stall, right? So we need to work on that. But at this point, in my opinion, the best thing to do is to read their justification for the expansion, understand the implication for your land, write comments on that saying, hey, this is what it's going to do to my land, because some of you were at the meeting in Acton and some of you were at the meeting in Pear Blossom, where I again pointed out 50% of the land at least is going to be removed from your use. Okay, I'll put it that way. And they disputed it and said I was completely wrong. So the more people who say those words to them and can say, hey, here's my land. I think it's about a category 4. I'm not a biologist, but it could be category 2, in which case what I'm about to tell you is even worse. But at the very worst for category 4, this is what it's going to do to me. And I just want to put a barn in. I just want to put a 240 square foot 2-stall facility for my horses, right? So the fact that they said that everything I mentioned about limiting the use of your land to 50% or less was wrong tells me that they have not done this kind of granular analysis. So I believe the best thing you can do is go home, look at how this affects your property, figure it out, and it affects your sale value, right? I mean, if you can't, maybe you're thinking about leaving or you have vacant land and it's your retirement savings, right? And it's 20 acres and you were going to subdivide it to 4 5s and sell it. Well, now you probably can't do that because subdivisions, by the way, are a project, a development, okay? And 5-acre lots are not large lot subdivisions, I don't think. I think they're 10 acres or more. So learn how it affects you and communicate that to the regional planning, because if it is true that they don't believe the things I said, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm just telling you what I've read the ordinance says and what I'm applying it to land, right? If they don't believe that, then let's convince them of it so that they can see this. Because I think we need to convince them that if they have connectivity that they want to achieve, what they should be doing is finding out all the habitat areas that they want to achieve connectivity on, figure out where that connectivity is, and work with you. You got 10 acres, maybe you wouldn't mind letting 100 feet on the north end be used for wildlife corridors. Every property is unique, so every situation is different. So we need to have a good understanding of the broader impacts of this so that we can form cogent, calm, respectful, detailed comments to fight this back. And at this point, since it's still in the preliminary stage, I don't know that there's much to do right now other than understand the implications for your property. So when they come back with the next round, which I don't know when that's going to be, could be a month, could be 10 months, could be a long, long time. But you will be prepared to say, okay, now I see what they're doing now. This is how it's going to affect us. And then we give the massive pushback. But I think it's fair to and there probably are people from regional planning on here, for them to look at these examples and see what I've said. And if it's wrong, let me know and say how it's wrong. And then I'll come back here and give a presentation and I'll eat crow and I say I was completely wrong. But this is everything that in black and white, what their guidelines say and what their own ordinance says.
Jackie, can you forward me the letter that you submitted to regional planning?
Yeah, we got another question.
Right, one more question.
Can I make comments?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I did some research, and the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution says, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. The county planner wants us to believe they are not physically stealing, but they are. Because the Supreme Court ruled decades ago that when the environmental regulation goes too far, when it strips away our right to build, to farm, or to use our own land, it becomes a regulatory taking. So by turning private land, yards, homesteads, and farms into mandatory wildlife corridors and preserves the plants, the county actually seizing a public asset for free. They are destroying our land values, leaving us with nothing but a tax bill for our property tax. For the land we cannot no longer use. So we have legal options here. We can file a class action against this county. I think we should unite it together to fight for this. And for the worst case scenario. I think we can study to death about how they're gonna take our land. It's not how we're gonna discuss how little they can take. It's as a matter of fact that they shouldn't take the bundle of our rights for using our land, period. So that's my comment.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate you going through and really giving us examples of how this works out. And we have lots of questions, but I think we all know enough that we can agree that this is absolutely unworkable. It's unacceptable and unworkable. And I can't imagine that there's anyone in the affected areas that thinks it's okay. I can only imagine town councils, not just in LA County, but all through California, because they're going through this as well. So I don't know what it takes to combine forces or whatever, but I imagine pitchforks and torches uses because it's absolutely unacceptable.
Well, maybe one of the things we can do is start like a group, right? Like put together a group of people who are concerned about this, spread it all over the place, and a grassroots effort. So in my community, I am heavily involved in a grassroots effort against a lot of these battery energy storage systems, and SORT has litigated it. I think we're up to 6 cases against the county so far. But I have an amazing person I work with. She's sitting right over her name is Ruthie here, Ruthie Brock. And she handles all of that outreach and connectivity because I'm not able to do that. I already have all the work I have to do just crafting the technical arguments and things and doing stuff like this. So I would certainly like to participate in a group grassroots effort on talking about property rights and Supreme Court rulings and all of these things. I think that's important, and I'm not able to lead that, but if somebody, and I know Ruthie's already jammed with all of her best, but I would certainly participate if somebody, could do something like that. I just don't have the capability or the bandwidth, but I would absolutely participate and provide all the technical commentary that I could possibly do to support that, because that is the information that has to go on the record that you need to be successful in any sort of litigation activity.
All right, we should go to Zoom. Anybody have a comment or question?
I've got one comment or request, as it were, to kind of piggyback on Jackie's comment about a grassroots movement or a group of some sort. I actually was the one to start the Facebook page, oppose the SEA expansion. I forget exactly what it's called now.
Is this Rachel?
This is Rachel.
Okay.
Hey, Jackie. I am effectively, I guess, pleading or asking somebody to reach out. I am now 8 months pregnant and unable to also fulfill that essential communication and taking the initiative there on this page, as the pregnancy's weighing on me, along with a toddler and a few other personal items. So somebody has some sort of interest in leading that page. I've invested some money to get some followers. It's got a good presence. Again, I know Ruthie's really heavily involved in a lot of communication and knows some things too. But if someone's interested in sort of heading this Facebook page, I would be happy to be passed along the baton, train somebody so that this can really take off, that sort of grassroots group, if we think that would be a help.
Well, yeah, I agree, Rachel, and Rachel's from Acton as well. I think Acton is sort of sandbagged this operation. I'm sorry about that, but I think a lot of people from other areas of Antelope Valley are here. But we might not be able to find the person to take over right today, but you know, put the word out. And if we can start some sort of, did everyone put their email address down on the sign-in sheet? So, you know, we can maybe start something like that. So I don't know if we'll have somebody tonight, Rachel, but hopefully we'll have something coming up soon.
Perfect. Yeah, I just figured this was a good platform to kind of make that bleed a little bit. So I apologize for taking up any time, but thank you guys.
Okay.
How do we place our email? Do we do that in the chat, or how do we share emails?
Yes, you can put it in the chat, and I think as presenters we'll have the email addresses. And one thing I wanted to say as the Association of Rural Town Councils is a lot of people are saying how we can fight back, and I know there's a lot of technical information that we've gone over today, but I think, yes, we are going to continue to help organize, and we can find someone for the Facebook page, and I think that's what we need, right? We just need more numbers, and obviously it is overreaching. We've heard from all the different town councils, and besides Lake Los Angeles, which has a very different, unique landscape where they're protecting the buttes. Almost everybody else has agreed, from the town councils who have read the ordinance, and also their community members that they speak with, that the gentleman mentioned pitchforks and fire and stuff, and I think so we'll continue to help organize it. Put your names on the chat, or we'll have the addresses. We're going to follow up with emails. We'll probably create another presentation without the technical difficulties, and we just got to get people together.
I think one of the main things is we need to get this information out to all the people. Most people have no idea what's going on. And if they do, they're all going to be fighting. Instead of just a few of us in the chat, a few of us at these meetings, there'll be thousands of people. And these laws that they're using to say, oh, well, we can do this because of these laws, they were never passed by the people. They were made up by LA County or wherever. So we do need to get together as a grassroots. We need to be looking at how we're going to do lawsuits. We need to look how we can stop it, not just accept things, but how we can actually stop this. They have no rights. Are we in a communist country? This is communism going on. Them grabbing the land. Also, them thinking that a lizard is more important than your family and the people. This is ridiculous. Also, they were going to bring a train through here. What a good way to steal the property so they can bring a train and do all these things. And if they were going to bring a train, then how is it significantly ecological area? Because they were going to bring a train through. It's just a land grab. And standing together is the only thing we could do. So some of the town council and these people, we do need to get together. We do need to let people know about these things. And so standing together, I think we could really make a dent and stop this.
Here's the problem where sustainable development came to be, or how this all came together was George Bush Sr. signed, it wasn't a treaty, but he, through the United Nations, initiated or joined the United States, so it never went to Congress, joined the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and so he assigned U.S. to this movement, which was all of this developed from the United Nations. And so it's not a treaty. It wasn't passed by Congress, but through Agenda 21, the United Nations has infiltrated every city, county, local government in which is passing laws and ordinances. And so it all stems from Agenda 21 and the United Nations.
No, I understand that. I heard the Agenda 21 thing, but if you look around in LA, actually in California, I don't see anybody else pulling this. It's just LA County. I have a lot of friends that live in different parts. And so what it is a test ground. LA is just saying they're trying to go after Acton and some of the rural communities to see what they can get away with and see if they can keep stealing more. There's plenty of land out there in Lancaster and different places that there's nobody on that they can go acquire and buy, and they can have their own land. Stealing from the people is wrong. These people need to be voted out of office, petitioned out of office, and we need to stand up as a community, and people need to know what is really going on. This is communism.
And that is the problem. Most people do not know what's going on. There's 28 participants at this meeting, and how many parcels, property owners this would affect, just in Los Angeles County alone. People don't know about it.
Yeah, and if everybody stood together, then we would have a chance. And this is just wrong, right to the core. Whoever's writing this stuff, trying to enforce it in LA County, should be voted out of office. They should not be working for the people. They forgot the golden rule. They work for the people. They're supposed to better our lives, not steal all our property and leave us destitute. I mean, this is just wrong to the core. And everybody that's here knows that. Even you government officials sitting here listening, you know it's wrong. What if this was your land? This is wrong. So we have to go beyond this. I know friends that are doing federal lawsuits, and this is where this needs to go. And everybody held accountable that is trying to pull this on the people.
I think, thanks.
I believe that I went to 2 meetings and they got a lot of hostile feedback. And I have a feeling that the next round is going to say something different and less onerous. I have no insight. They've not talked. Trust me, they're not talking to me. But I believe that the opposition was strong enough that they're going to come back with another offer, if you will. And then let's take a look at that. And then because I don't know, would people be satisfied if they just kept the existing exemptions but allowed the expansion? I'm still troubled by the expansion, but I don't think they should be changing the ordinance at the very least,
Okay, I just have a...
You're right. Go on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Don has...
I just have a quick comment, and all these ideas I've been hearing are very good ideas, and they should be pursued. But sometimes we have to go back to the fundamentals, which is we've got to get people to come out and vote. In the 2026 election, only 37.76% of the people came out and voted. There is no fear. When people vote in massive numbers, 2 things happen. 1, you put the fear of God into the people in office because they could be voted out. That's their only job. And 2, if you get people to vote, they have skin in the game. They now care about what's happening. They're going to take the time to learn. So I think while all these ideas should be pursued, we should also really be pushing to vote. I mean, my dad was a Vietnam Korean War veteran. He fought in Korean War in a foxhole in the middle of winter with the Chinese army coming up the hill at him. And I can't get my neighbors to walk across the street and vote in a garage. I mean, give me a break. So I think we need to you want people involved, get them to vote. Then now they have skin in the game.
Yeah, no, Jackie, I'm not... Sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to answer your question, Jackie, I'm not okay unless they exempt, the Antelope Valley and single family residences. I'm not okay giving any portion of my land to a land trust on a property that I've lived on for 30 years, and at a whim, the FEMA can put it in a flood zone, and then I'm required to get flood insurance, and then they can remove it, and it's whimsical. It's at their own, whatever they feel like.
I agree.
That's right. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable because we've all lived here. And even if we just get our own personal land out of this area, it's still wrong. The whole idea is wrong. The whole thing is that we need to stand together and fight for not just our properties, but everybody in the community. But it is also getting all these people aware of what's going on. I've been talking to neighbors, and most of them they never thought this could happen. And you know what? If we all of us start telling our neighbors, we go and we show them where to write the letters, which I have written letters. You know what? They'll start listening to us, because if we have overwhelming numbers, we will win. I have friends in Northern California that have won a lot of things by just the turnout of the people, because the representatives will go, oh, okay, the people feel strongly. When nobody shows up and none of us, do anything, they're just going to keep walking on us. That's why the SEA's area is bigger, because now this is another test. They're going to take parts of the community. After this goes by, they're going to ask for more, and it's going to keep going, and then it's going to be too late. We need to stop them in their tracks. We need to let every one of our neighbors know, not being lazy, but we need to let everybody around us. If all of us open our mouths and let everybody know, guess what? Our numbers are getting bigger. And we can do a petition because, they change laws. But the first thing is getting the information out, letting people know what's really going on. Because if thousands of people write to our representatives of our area about the SEAs, things will change. They won't try it. But if they only get a couple people, maybe 50 or 100 people, they're going like, there's thousands of people. They're not going to fight this. We're just going to push this through. And any of the SEA stuff is all unacceptable. Taking any of our properties is unacceptable.
I agree. I went door to door when you...
To your point, Jeff, what we're up against here is a county that has already been doing this regularly to people in the Santa Monica Mountains area and Malibu and all that area for over seven, at least 7, maybe 8 years. I was at a regional planning commission hearing some time ago, and a gentleman who was just trying to build his house on a piece of property in Malibu was going through this process before the planning commission just to build a house. And I watched the presentation. I did the math of the size of the property and what he was allowed to do. They took 90% of his land, and he was allowed to, and they told him very clearly, you can touch this part, but not that part. And I walked up to him afterwards. He goes, they just took 90% of your land. He goes, well, what can I do? It's like, so the county is used to doing this already to put people outside the Antelope Valley. So I agree, as an area, not just a community, but as an area, we need to stand up and say, okay, you've been getting away with this in Malibu all over the place, but we're different. We're not going to just sit down for this. So.
Yeah, we're not going to roll over and die. I mean, it's wrong, and we all know it's wrong. They know it's wrong. You get a couple of people in office that think how they can steal or do whatever they want to do, so they have their agenda, and it's just totally wrong. They even know it's wrong. But like I said, if you stand together, get enough people to write letters, things might change. They might, think we're not easy pickings, but it's not voted on by the people. That's another thing. None of this stuff was voted on by the people and passed by the people to do this.
For the county representative that's on here, I request that letters be sent out to every parcel property owner that is being, whether they're in a current designation as a C or part of the expansion. It shouldn't have just been random, letters sent out to some property owners. It needs to be sent out to every property owner.
Well, also to the government that's listening, do you think people are going to give up their homes and their land and everything, their dreams, to you for no reason? People are going to start fighting back. This is going to get ugly. It's going to be in lawsuits. It's going to be things. And you know what? When these lawsuits get, like one of my friends is doing one of the lawsuits, they go to the people that are pushing this thing, their names will be on the lawsuits personally. So you the people that are pushing this see saying, your names will be on the lawsuit. We will be going after you personally on top of it.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey, and everybody for your comments, everyone for attending online and in person. We're going to wrap up the meeting, but like we said earlier, we will share more information in the coming days. Maybe have another meeting, slightly more, maybe we'll have more information then for the organization part of this.
Maybe when the next round comes out.
Yeah, maybe when the next round comes out, we'll see, depending on the timing.
So yeah, so the next round meaning any additions that they do to the draft. So that's what we're waiting for. Obviously, we're trying to provide as much input as we can, and we're letting them know our communities are not happy with this. We're very upset. So we'll send you guys more information. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
We're gonna end the meeting. We're gonna walk out and we'll have a drink, maybe.